Crouse.
Well, let's talk a little bit about last night and the audience last night, because
an interesting mix of people.
It was an interesting mix of people, but I've done millions of these Q&As afterwards, and normally you lose about a third of the audience. As soon as the credits start to roll, the third of the audience walks out and gets up and leaves. Last night, nobody left. Everybody stayed. There was a really warm round of applause. And then in the second one, when you came out, that has to make you feel good. Is it validation for you when you were trying to get this small project off the ground? Now that you know that audiences are really loving it, how does that make you feel?
It's almost indescribable, because when you set out to make a very modest film on a modest budget in 24 days, and you're in 3 states, and you have all these musical numbers, and you've never done it before, and you've never directed a commercial or a rock video or even a high school play, and then to have who really count, the people who are putting down their $10 and who really embrace it and who understand all the themes that course through this movie, that then course through their lives on a daily basis, the hope and regret and things we talked about, pain and redemption and salvation, things that we all either seek or that we experience daily, and for them to recognize that in themselves that they see in the movie. And also for them, to people who don't necessarily like country music, because the themes are universal. And people have come up to me who say, I've never loved country music, but I love this music. Well, it's because it's very honest, and the performances are honest, and the writing, and it's very simple. And I think people can really see a lot of themselves in the characters in this film and the themes, and I think it's resonating. Well, I know it's resonating because they tell me afterwards. They all know about Blake, or they all have suffered loss of a relative, or estrangement, and loss of a marriage, and all the things that we experience in this film, and that is the validation right there.
Well, I guess because, as you say, the themes are universal. So even if you don't like, this could have been about, a down-and-out ballet dancer. It could have been about almost anything like that,
sure,
as long as the overriding themes are the same.
That's exactly right. And I wanted this also to be about a man who's on a personal journey, a man who feels like he's lost his vitality, he's lost his artistry, he's lost, for the better part, a reason that he feels like he's always existed, which is to perform and to play for people and write songs for himself and for others that they've loved. That too many people of his age are now operating on the periphery of the entertainment industry, and they are forgotten because they don't get radio play and they don't get television and print coverage. And these people are trying to make a living as best as they can, but they all still have something to say that's important. And this man in particular, Bad Blake, is a guy who writes about his personal experiences. And my favorite performers do that, whether it's Canada's own Ron Sexsmith, or who's one of my favorites, or Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, or Michael Stipe at R.E.M., or of course Merle Haggard,
or
Townes Van Zandt, or Waylon, Lucinda Williams, people who really understand how to craft a song and understand how to express their personal worldview, their vision, and do it eloquently and poetically.
Interesting, in the film you say that here's a man who's kind of lost his artistry. There's a great scene where he's noodling around on the guitar and he makes up a little song, and Maggie Gyllenhaal says to him, you can do that so easily, and you don't understand how great that is. You don't understand how important that is.
10 years of their life to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And for you, it just pours out at you.
Yeah.
And then she leaves. And that's true, because some people have that gift. Jeff Bridges has that gift as an actor. Mm-hmm. T-Bone Burnett has that gift as a musical producer. Almost, they're savants. And Robert Duvall has that gift. And this is a man who, that's the beginning of that scene, as he's back from the hospital on her bed. That's the beginning of his writing The Weary Kind. It's the first time he starts experimenting with it, and throughout the course of the film, we see him writing it. And we understand that it's a part of the fabric of his life. It's the narrative thread of the story. And I think it's important, that's when we first realize it. And it does come easily to him because he's so human, and he knows how to illuminate the human condition.
Well, he's also... I describe these guys as like hard-living poets. I don't know that they'd ever describe themselves as poets, but
Merle Haggard is.
Yeah,
the poet laureate of country music.
Absolutely, and a way of expressing themselves through words. And it's interesting, even when he's not singing, he still speaks like a songwriter. And there's a line I wanted to ask you about, which is he and Jean are in the seedy motel room. They're about to do the interview, and she says, I want to ask you. And then he says, you know what, I want to ask you about how bad, I want to talk about how bad you make this room look. Tell me a little bit about where that line came from, because it said two things to me. It told me that Bad Blake, as played by Jeff Bridges, really used to charming women, so he knows how to get through them. And also, but he speaks like a songwriter. He speaks like someone who knows how to play with words.
You absolutely nailed it on both fronts. A man who is irascibly charming and who is able to express himself in ways that people can't, and in that kind of poetic lyricism that he does there. But he also genuinely means it, because he hasn't had a woman like this in his life in a long time. She's young, she's vital, she cares about him. She falls in love with his honesty, and the same with him. He falls in love with her honesty. And also, it's the sign of a master craftsman at work. A man who can write a line like, I used to be somebody and now I'm somebody else, or sometimes fall and feels like flying, or pick up your crazy heart and give it one more try. All of those songs, and the lyrics that come from those songs. And that line, to me, seemed like something that George Jones might write, or Waylon, certainly, and it felt very appropriate. And I have them sprinkled throughout the film, and I hope they come across as organic.
Yeah. Well, this one really struck me because the whole idea of it is that seeing her, he realizes that's the beginning of his real redemption. He realizes that beyond these seedy hotel rooms that he's forced to stay in and the places that he's playing and that kind of thing, there is something better that he can aspire to. That's what I took away from it.
That's exactly right, because he now knows that he has a purpose in life, and someone's making him feel like he has a purpose, and someone's helping him, even though he doesn't yet understand it, but he does, that he's rediscovering his artistry. And he says to her, I haven't seen somebody blush in I don't know how long. And she says, well, my capillaries are close to the skin. So she isn't giving him all the credit, but then, they have they're flirting, and we know that this may be the beginning of an unlikely but a good relationship.
When you wrote that line, or then when you heard Jeff Bridges say that line, did you go, bingo, that worked?
I absolutely knew, because I told Jeff, anytime that you see this writing, what I don't want it to do is have it come across as being clever or seemingly overly written. I wanted it to feel organic. You throw those lines away, and Jeff does that beautifully. That's why you hire people with his instincts and his sensibilities.
Richard